Fuzzy Belvedere, we got to get into the second topic of the show. Now, this obviously, ladies and gentlemen, is the lead title. Phil Spencer's Multiplat plan is not only brilliant, but I'm going to break down as to why it is. Now, this week, we saw Xbox take up 5 of the top 10 most pre-ordered spots. And that is pretty damn amazing for a company known to only produce mid games, right? Now that's where we got to throw some salt into the faces. And again, we don't do the names thing here, folks, because we don't need to swim in those waters. But you know exactly what I'm talking about. And we've been hearing for years that Xbox can't put out AAA bangers. Xbox, their games are mid. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to reiterate who said it, but I remember there was some serious naysaying going on with even Forza Horizon 5, like another party racer game, right? You know who I'm talking about. These people are probably lined up to buy it, and they will never admit that they're playing it. And I don't know if you can hide what you're playing on PlayStation, because my stuff is all open, but maybe you can, and maybe they will. But rounding out the top 4 slots, this is number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yet Indiana Jones, both versions, the $100 edition at number 1, the $70 edition at number 2, and at number 3, you had the $100 edition of a 4-year-old game. And then, of course, at the 4th spot was the regular edition of Forza Horizon 5. And then at one point at the number 10 spot was Doom the Dark Ages, the $100 edition of Doom the Dark Ages. Now, folks, look, I'm no mathematician. And you've heard me say this. I think I made mention of this on Primetime Gaming. I said months ago that there was going to come up a time and a point where PlayStation's top either paid for, pre-ordered, or most played games were going to have half of Xbox first-party studios. And that has happened, folks. So now there's been a lot of hate for Phil Spencer for a lot of reasons. Lying Phil Spencer, as they said. Everyone keeps going back to that podcast from, I believe it was it last year in January, where he said only 4 games, and we all knew that he was talking about 4 games that year, and there has been only 4 games so far. We know that there are other games coming, 2 big ones in April: Indiana Jones, Forza Horizon. We know that. Starfield, listen, the cat's out of the bag, folks. That's happening this year. We've heard Nate the Hate talk about it. We've heard other people make mention of it. At the beginning of the year, one of the listed games from some of the insiders was Hellblade 2. That's probably happening this year. And I would imagine that when those games drop into the PlayStation service, they are going to be number 1, number 2, and they're going to take up significant spots in their most pre-ordered / bought and / paid for games. This is happening, folks. So where I'm going with this story isn't where you think, because, just sitting and pondering at how the Trojan horse, or Operation Trojan Horse, for Phil Spencer and Microsoft getting their games onto PlayStation, and eventually the Switch 2, has really taken up and a lot of the public conversation, right? Like, that is something that is, no matter where you go on the socials, you have people still on PlayStation saying that it's an L for Xbox because they don't have to buy an Xbox. And that's fine. If you believe that this is an L for Xbox, I think you're reading the room wrong, but it's okay. It's fine. Have your opinion. But where I think that this story goes, Fuzzy Belvedere, and I really want to drive this point home, I want the chat involved, and of course I'm going to get your thoughts on it, is just take a step back. Let's just put a pause on gaming for a second, right? Now, we know that the big no-no for this show and most shows is politics. We don't do that kind of stuff because politics is filthy, and I can't stand it. But tariffs is a real thing, and you're starting to see most of the heavy lifting because of these tariffs are falling onto us, right? The working mom and pop. We are the ones that are now suffering. The people with the big money, it doesn't matter to them because they have zeros upon zeros upon zeros in their bank account. I don't know about you. I don't, right? But where I want to take the story is this. Right now, we know, thanks to Matt Piscatello a couple of weeks ago, you've heard me make mention of this, that we, as hardcore gamers, we have 500 people here watching live. So a big thank you to the 500 people that are here watching live. Mrs. Boom and I incredibly are grateful for it. We equate 4% of the populace, leaving 96% of the casual audience and the normies. Now, the normies, what do they equate to? 10, 15, right? 15% at the best. The rest are the casual audience. The casual audience bought PlayStation 3s and 4s and 5s and will probably buy PlayStation 6s because that's just what they do. They're casuals. They're good for 3 games a year, right? You've heard me talk about this numerous times. So I think that we are on a trajectory here, Fuzzy Belvedere. And again, this is you can say it's a stretch, overextension on my opinion, but I don't really think so because PlayStation 5 they've shipped 75 million. That's awesome, right? They're almost on par to where the PlayStation 4 was and the PlayStation 4 Pro was during their life cycle. That's awesome for Sony. But we all know that they're not making money hand over fist with console sales. It's software. It's always been software, and and obviously it's services, which is big. And we know that Sony took a hit in their services. They lost 15+% of the populace because people don't want to pay for it. People can't afford to pay for it. So, Fuzzy, we were talking in the green room, and I had a thought and a theory. You're going to get one of these casuals, not the normies, the casual gamers that are going to get Forza Horizon 5. Maybe they just buy the $60 edition because it's $59.99, and they're okay with that. Maybe they buy some DLC, but maybe this is their first Xbox game, right? And they're like, wow, this is really good. And Indiana Jones releases in the same month. And they're like, oh my God, I remember Indiana Jones. That looks dope. I need that in my life. Mm-hmm. And there's a $70 version. There's a $100 version. They don't buy the $100 edition. They buy the $76.43 after tax. At some point, and I really do believe this, folks, I don't suggest, and I'm not suggesting, that people are going to start burning their PlayStation 5s or running to their local game or GameStop, or I was going to say EB Games, that's because I'm old, wherever, their Best Buy, and trade in their PlayStation 5s to get Xbox consoles because they made a good racer. No, what I'm suggesting is what used to hold people to PlayStation was what? First-party output, because they had all of the bangers. You had the Uncharteds and the Horizons and all of their incredible bangers, right? God of War. Every year was something. If it wasn't, a new God of War, it was a new Uncharted, or it was a new IP in Horizon, or it was this, it was that. Well, they don't have that anymore. There is nothing holding someone who appreciates Sony's first party to the brand anymore. There just isn't. And there's not going to be, at least for the next couple of years, because again, Ghosts of Yotai is a sequel to a game that sold decently, sure, and sold really good on PC, but there's going to be a lot of people aren't going to buy because they don't know who the character is. It's not like Kratos from God of War. So there's nothing holding them to this console. Why do I need a PlayStation 5? Well, these casuals play Madden and Apex Legends and all of these third-party games, which now Microsoft is. So you say, how does that equate them buying an Xbox and moving over to Xbox? Folks, it's tariffs. It's a pack of meat being less expensive than a dozen eggs. That's the reason. And if, again, you got to understand, these casuals understand what a streaming service is because they have them already. They have probably 5 to 10 services that they pay for, whether it be Hulu or Netflix or pick your favorite 5. They probably have them. They know what they get with those services because they are informed consumers. Folks, I'm here to tell you, I think that the power keg of first party output and the value of Xbox Game Pass at $20 a month. If you just look at some of our favorite creators on the socials, look what Clobriel did the other day. He put up a graphic of the last 6 months of Xbox bangers, both first party and third party in Game Pass, and that list was ridiculous. Like, we absolutely are so spoiled, it doesn't even make sense. You're going to get people to be like, I can get an Xbox and I can pay for this service. I think you're going to see, I'm not suggesting that they're going to be trading in their PlayStations, but I think you're going to see a lot of people look and ask the question, why should I have a PlayStation when I can get all of these games on a service? And that really is the crux of the conversation. Please, if you think that I'm spitballing here, you can say it in the chat. I'm not going to get angry. I think there's a lot to this story. Fuzzy, I want to get your thoughts and your theories on this because I know you have a lot to say on it.
Well, one of the big things that people used to always say is that when it comes to changing platforms, you always have this back catalog. And with the casuals, a lot of that back catalog are, annual editions of Call of Duty or annual editions of Madden. And one of the advantages, if they do decide to jump ship and head over to Xbox and they pick up a Game Pass subscription, is that at some point, and this is where Xbox really needs to be on message and get the ball going as far as getting a lot of those Call of Duties in the service. If they have all of the Call of Duties in Game Pass, then that pretty much takes care of probably a majority of the casual gamers back catalog, so they don't lose out anything. And if they even keep or hold on to their games, like a lot of what we think of as casuals are the ones that, like I've heard before, where you would trade it in to get the next copy, and you get basically like $20 to $30 off the next copy kind of thing. So if they are the ones where they've already traded in stuff, but then they would like to have gone back to one of their favorite zombie modes in a previous Call of Duty, and it's in Game Pass, then that's going to be that's going to have extra incentive for them. And it's not necessarily a fact of getting rid of that box. It could be a matter of, well, instead of getting the next generation PS6, they pick up either the current generation of Xbox or the next generation of Xbox at that point, just for the fact that overall they'll be spending less money to have access to more of the games that they normally play, and some that they may have passed on because, well, the economy being what it is. Like we a lot of us in the chat and a lot of us on panels and things like that, we usually pick up at least a game a month on average, let's say, but that's 4% of the populace of the gaming, community. When it comes to the casual, if they're mainly picking up 2 or 3 games a year, and Call of Duty is one of them, Madden might be the other one, or NBA 2K might be the other. Well, a lot of the older title or just as they're like 3 to 6 months out from the next season, those wind up being in Game Pass. Like we've seen NBA 2K go in usually after about 3 to 6 months from the time of launch. Same thing with Madden. So if they are patient, they can go ahead like around Super Bowl time or around the playoffs time and have that game in the service without having to shell out the full $70 and stuff. And we're seeing a lot more perks that either give you VC or give you the coins or upgradable content for some of those games. So all of that considered, for their $20 a month plus, let's say a $250 that they would spend on like a Series S, that's enough of a bargain. I wouldn't say agreement, but enough of a bargain for them to consider it. Will people come over in droves? Probably not, but I think enough people will start to make that choice where it's like, hey, I have access to all the Call of Duties. I have access to some of the Maddens that I would like to have gone back to. Oh, NCAA, like especially for those that are still on PS4 and Xbox One, maybe they didn't do the upgrade already for those consoles to get something like NCAA, but now it's in the service. Hey, maybe they have a computer powerful enough to do the streaming aspect of it, or they can do the console streaming on an Xbox One. That's all of the things that add up as far as making it more of an appealing platform. And that was one of the key things that Phil Spencer talked about. Like, he wants to differentiate the platforms by the features of the hardware. Well, one of the features that even goes back to the older hardware is that streaming capability. So if you have decent internet, you're not really missing out. They're making improvements to their streaming services. Plus, they have some of the tech that we've seen from Activision, some of the tech from Bethesda, as far as making some of that streaming service even better, that they're starting to integrate into their current setup. So I would say you're onto something as far as there will be some migration. How large of a migration? Only time will tell, kind of thing. But I do think there will be some appeal, especially for those that are still on last generation's hardware, looking to make that next leap. And in a lot of cases, those same people may not upgrade to the PS6 or the Xbox Series X2 or whatever kind of deal. They might just upgrade to what we're currently in this current generation, knowing that it's going to be cheaper on the shelf, knowing that there's a full library already released. If they should choose to partake in any of that, they may only go up one generation, or they may leapfrog and go to the very next generation. But Game Pass, its value proposition that it offers is something that you can't deny does have some draw to it. And knowing Xbox, if they can nail the messaging for that consumer base, where they can now market Call of Duty, now they can hopefully soon they'll be able to say, hey, all the Call of Duties in this same service that you'll have access to. Getting Game Pass Ultimate automatically includes the online aspect of things. That's going to probably be the game changer that might draw some of those PlayStation cats over. But we'll see. But it does have merit in being that I guess draw to the platform. So we'll see.
It's funny, and again, everyone's going, having a great time going back and forth with each other. And again, I want to make something super clear here. The abandonment of digital collections seems to be a sticking point for some people in the chat. So here's the thing, Fuzzy, you hit the nail on the head, and I apologize for not leading that. I'm glad you made mention of it, because I would have forgotten about it. We as hardcore gamers, right? 4%, folks. Just remember that. It's 4%. I have a digital library on my Series X that's 1,000 games strong. 1,000 plus games. I buy a lot of shit. I just bought 4 games this week. Smaller titles. And again, I don't know why I do this to myself, because I'll go through what I paid for, and I'm like for instance, A Quiet Place. A game came out, it was on sale, I bought it. I know I kept seeing Jamie Moran talk about it. I'm like, oh my God, I got to play it. I love the films. And I just saw it the other day. I'm like, oh my God, I got to play that freaking game, because I forgot all about it. So I buy a lot of games. I have over 1,000 games going all the way back to the OG Xbox to current, right? Do I have all of them saved to a hard drive? No. I think I have an 8 terabyte hard drive and a 5 hooked up. And there's still a lot of room, but I don't keep all the games on there. Whatever, it's fine. So I have a ridiculous digital library. But Fuzzy hit the nail on the head. You have to understand, and you have to, again, we're all hardcore here, folks. Understand there's a 513 people watching live. You're here because, well, I hope that you're here because you enjoy hearing me and Fuzzy and the rest of my guests talk about gaming, but you're here because you're a hardcore gamer. Whether you spend 10 hours a day watching podcasts or playing games, you are the hardcore. Fuzzy made mention of something that is super important to think about, especially in the direction I tried to take this conversation. Value proposition is going to be the contributing factor on whether or not someone stays with PlayStation, Xbox, or Nintendo. Why? Because right now everything is super expensive. And again, take yourself away from the hardcore mentality. Most gamers, most of the casual audience, right? I've seen it. I have friends that have this. They have one controller, they have their console, and right next to them a stack of games that's probably 8 games deep. And most of them are old NHLs, old Maddens, old Call of Duties, right? There might be something that's a third party in there, like an Assassin's Creed, right? There might be there's probably a GTA 5 there. Everyone bought like 10 copies of it. Didn't even realize that we all did. We all bought 10 copies of GTA 5 at one point or another. They probably have that. But what these normies or casuals go and do is they take, when a new game is coming out like Madden, and they take their 5 or 6 games and they go to GameStop and they get 50 cents per game, right? Because GameStop, they're terrible, right? And they buy the next Madden. And that is where they go. But Madden isn't PlayStation first party, ladies and gentlemen. It's just not. And Xbox is hitting. Now, granted, this next part of the conversation is all on the plate of Microsoft, and they could, in fact, F this up. What am I talking about? That is getting out there to the peoples and letting them know about the game, about Game Pass, letting them know about Xbox, the Series consoles, Series S, Series X. And look, I understand that they don't read the trades like we do, right? They're casuals, folks. They just don't. But what they do understand is money. And if there is something that is special, like a Call of Duty, like a Doom, the Dark Ages, like a Gears of War or an Avowed, or even South of Midnight that's on your screen, these are all in a service that's $20 a month. You're going to get someone that's going to look at this and be like, wait a second. You're saying that I just paid $100 because I know Forza. I played it on the OG Xbox or on the Xbox 360. I loved it. This one looks fantastic. And they just spent $100. Do you know that if they just again, they're casuals, paid the $100, they could have gotten this game and 100 plus other games for the 5 months of that $100 they just spent on the game, folks. You're going to see people move over. And again, they're not beholden to the PlayStation plastic box because there's nothing holding them there. That's the thing. We keep hearing, oh, the first party for PlayStation, even if they were playing or having games every 6 months or every year, PlayStation gamers, the casual audience, don't buy these games. They just don't. And this is an ingenious plan that we would have never been thinking if we wouldn't have gotten where we are, Fuzzy. Any additional thoughts on what I just said?
Other than, I know it, like with PlayStation talking about like their first party, the biggest thing now is that we heard recently, I guess Intergalactic is not 2026, it's more than likely 2027.
Yeah.
So there is going to be this time period where their focus is just going to be on 1 or 2 titles a year outside of MLB. So the normal, I guess you could say, draw or anchor to keep you within the PlayStation, ecosystem used to be that they were doing 3+ of their first party or partnered deals. And they're still going to have, like from the China project, I think they're still going to have some partner deals throughout the year. But that still might only be 1 or 2 for the year overall. So with Xbox's first party releasing numbers of titles, and sure, some of them wind up on PlayStation at a later time, it's going to get to a point where if you're about certain games or trying certain games, but want to, stay within a budget, Game Pass is going to be the better alternative to something like PS Essential or even PS Plus, like their upper tiers and things. So it's really more so how the way Game Pass is set up in comparison. Like, sure, you could do the EA play on PlayStation, but with it being rolled into Game Pass and such, there is some benefit for things like, yeah, Madden is not a first party for either platform, but as someone that has Game Pass, you automatically have a lot of their, stuff that they drop in there, unless you're already an EA subscriber on
Yep.
PlayStation. So there's a lot more things kind of lumped in when you do Game Pass or Game Pass Ultimate that you get as perks, not just the perks that they offer, but the perks from first party, perks from getting third party day and date in a lot of cases, or getting some of the bigger games within the first 6 months of their release, which if you're looking at like PS Essentials, which other than a few partnered handful titles, there aren't many that go in within the first 6 months or within the first 8 or 9 months. It usually is about a year later, which that's changed on some of the smaller titles, let's say for indies and things like that. But when you're getting some of the bigger third parties like your Capcoms, like your Sega, putting titles, at launch in there in Game Pass, that could be the differentiating factor. But overall, given their first party, Call of Duty is probably a big enough draw. Once they get all of the back compat or the older Call of Duties in that service, all the Dooms are currently in the service. So if you're into that, all the Fallouts are in the service. All of the Skyrims and stuff are in the service and stuff. So there's so much already there that you would have access to, that whether you had it in your previous library or you traded it into GameStop, or it's just something that you may have passed on because of timing or finances back when it was launched, and having it in the service now for the subscription price, which even spending it over the year versus what you would be spending on the games themselves, I think a lot of people will look at that as a potential benefit moving forward. But like I said before, we'll see. The key thing is marketing. If marketing nails that or drives that nail home as far as having all of this access to all of these games, oh, by the way, that you can play on other devices that you may already own, like your tablet, like your cell phone, like your laptop or your desktop computer, that's going to be the key thing. And that's the value proposition aspect of gaming where you want, how you want. I mean, sure, you could still game on your old PlayStation. They may not even trade that in. It's just a matter of if their primary box or primary, platform eventually becomes Xbox, that benefits not only Xbox platform, but gaming as a whole at that point, because now, given how much investment Xbox has put into third parties or partnered publishers and developers and things along those lines, it looks like they'll have a more full, not just catalog, but also access to a lot more games than what they may have even imagined in their best case dream back in the Blockbuster days. So, yeah, I think that's what a lot of people may overlook. But once again, like it was said earlier, most of us here that are listening to this or on these panels, we're the hardcore, the 4%, the extreme minority as far as the gaming community. The casuals will be the one that will, let us know as far as what the industry will kind of focus on. And keep in mind, the casuals are the same ones that are really dived into these free to play games. They're the ones, and part of the reason why some of them might not even buy games a year. They just go with the free to play, and maybe they could do that season pass and things. And knowing that Xbox is now going to give you some of the perks in conjunction with that, plus having your online access, which they've all on the free to play games kind of waived that charge, but we'll see what the next generation holds if they waive all of that online access in favor of just the catalog of titles and things like that. But in general, the casuals kind of, manipulate the market in a way where the publishers chase that group. And we'll see how that goes.